All right, so what's the old saying? It's cleanliness is next to godliness, right? So why would your extreme metal band want to sound clean as shit when metal inherently always has a middle finger pointed at religion in general? Well, that's the direction we're kind of heading in right now with the modern tech metal movements. You could see it bleeding over from the YouTube guitarist right now, which is essentially players that are kind of getting a whole bunch of boutique amps that are incredibly expensive, but still putting out what sounds like a direct input, where it's just totally clean, no gain at all, because the focus is on the playing and being as clean as possible when you're trying to get your riffs across. The idea is more rooted in expressing the technique than actually the context of what is being played in the material, because there's really nothing being said. So because people are very easily able to attach themselves to the superficial elements in music or art or anything, this is catching steam, because you can see the technique, you can hear exactly what's being played, and it's easy to emulate. You can decide, I want to have that exact same technique at my disposal. I want to be as clean as possible to show the world how good I am at my instrument, which puts you in the incorrect mindset for producing anything artistic. But that YouTube guitarist fixation on clean playing has bled into death metal, or modern tech death, whatever they're calling it now. And this is a band I'm kind of unfamiliar with, the Zenith Passage. They are the name is always being thrown around with other names like the Faceless, all that modern like kind of cynic inspired death metal that's actually just metalcore, but it's become what people understand tech death to be, which is a bit of a misnomer. But the new single from this band, and this is my first exposure to them, maybe they sounded different before, it takes that idea of clean playing and clean production to kind of a satirical level. It's the type of thing, when you listen to it, it's so inoffensive that it just feels like the kind of metal you'd want to show your grandparents. Like, this is something you can get into. It's not abrasive in any way, and it kind of lowers the mask in terms of, you can now see in broad daylight that these are not metal musicians. If this is your focus, if the clean playing is the focus, if the aesthetic is the focus, then it really does broadcast to the audience that you don't have a statement that you're making aside from the technique. And as I've said before on this channel, technique is used to get your message across. You have to have the message first, and then you can use your technique, your speed, your brutality, whatever you want to do to fashion that message forward. The technique should not be the focus, though. If the technique is the focus, then you have an inherently empty product. But nevertheless, this is where we are. So I want to show you this song. I'm going to do my best not to laugh at it. But before then, it makes me wonder how much of the metal that I enjoyed in the past is rooted in how much I enjoy the production. I've always said that if I listen to the music I like in MIDI format, where it's just the notes all at the same dynamic and it sounds like shit and it's fake, if I can hear the way those notes impact upon each other and the arrangements therein, if the music still has that kind of impact on me, I know that it's objectively got strengths to it. So it makes me wonder, like when we talked about Carcass in one of the last videos, and there was a debate on whether or not Necroticism is a good record, and I wonder to myself, what about that record resonates with me? And I really think the reason that I enjoy it is the production. I love how the guitars sound. I like the murky nature of it. I like the clashing of the hilarious medical samples with that murky, evil-sounding guitar. If Necroticism came out now with the mids pumped up and the guitar sounding inherently fake, with every note being down-picked, all that shit, I don't think it would have that kind of impact. I would probably ignore the record. So that tells me there's probably some truth to the argument that Necroticism doesn't have the kind of objective strengths that I once thought it did. Maybe I've been fooled by some of those production techniques, and I'm always going to enjoy going back to like a Scott Burns produced record. I like that sound. I like that scooped mid evil sound, which is hilarious because now that I do my own music, I tend to jack up the mids because I want to hear what I'm doing, and I'm inverting what I know like my death metal preferred sound is. But you can't really get that if you're just at home and you're dialing in guitar sounds and you're away from the mix of how a band sounds live or on recording. You can end up getting a sound you like and then realizing it doesn't work in the scope of a full band. I spent a while last week honing in a sound, and I really loved how it sounded, and then I got together with my drummer and he started playing and it felt all wrong, so I had to go back to the drawing board. And the same will be said when I start adding the other elements in. Bass player comes in, everybody else comes in, it ends up affecting the dynamic. But the way modern metal is fixated on the guitar and how clean it is right now, it's obviously a guitar forward type of movement right now. The focus is the guitar, so make sure that is clean as possible so that you could hear the technique and not be blindsided by it. Whereas if you listen to what tech metal was in like the late 90s with records like Cryptopsy's Whisper Supremacy, you can't tell what the fuck is happening in some of those parts. And that ambiguity kind of has it has this unease to it that I really enjoy within like a metal kind of environment. I like the idea that there is like a veil over some of it. If the mask is lowered to the point where I can tell everything that's happening, it kind of decreases from the replay value, and it takes me out of the element of the idea that this band is presenting something that can transcend just the human senses of auditory understanding. But here we have just straight up, everything is maxed and it's clean, and most likely if you listen to it, you're going to be able to tell that it was recorded a note at a time with it all being downstroked, which gives it that kind of percussive nature that makes the notes sound abundantly clear and powerful by themselves, but it sounds like it's faked because you can't downpick in that kind of speed. And you'll hear that a lot in bands like Rings of Saturn. That kind of shit is recorded a note at a time, or it's straight up a Guitar Pro that's you end up recording exactly what the computer is spitting out at you. This I don't think is the case with this band. I'm just going to play it because I'm rambling on it, but this is the new track from the Zenith Passage, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. I just want to focus on the presentation, the aesthetic of the band, and we'll talk about what that means for where modern metal is heading as a whole. Somehow, on Unique Leader Records, I'm sure Eric is rolling in his grave. Okay, so as you can tell, this is pretty fucking hilarious sounding. I mean, if you're going to be an extreme metal band, why would you want to hit me with this cuddly ass guitar tone? You know, it's like, it's fucking borderline soothing. Like, I feel like I'm in a spa. It's ridiculous. But as for what the music is doing itself, this sounds like it's a further ripple effect from what Decapitated did on Spheres of Madness. If you were dabbling in extreme metal at like the turn of the century, whenever that second Decapitated record came out, like in '98 or whatever, that particular song had a draw to the hardcore and metalcore audiences too, because it was percussive. It had this kind of like syncopated Meshuggah quality to it, and it wasn't just rooted in the low string. It had some stuff going on in the mid range of the guitar as well, but it was chopped up and syncopated. And this feels like that. It feels like what Decapitated did in Spheres of Madness, and you ended up seeing that riff style copied repeatedly in the last like 20 years within not the extreme metal genre, but within like the metalcore and deathcore type of genre. There's other bands this brings to mind. I can hear. I doubt they know who this band is, but I can hear what Oppressor was doing on Agony, namely the song Passage. It sounds like it has a similar kind of note interval in there. It sounds like, what's that one band, Scepter of the Ancients, Psychroptic. That band started off, they were a Unique Leader band as well, I believe, and it sounded like that same kind of approach to the melody that you're hearing here. That melodic style is very much the Psychroptic style, but it's way clean, and the Psychroptic thing that he was doing was a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs, and it was clean, but it was never this clean. And then the band kind of started to devolve and show that they were more rooted in the metalcore, hardcore scene than in death metal, and it was something that a lot of people probably picked up on with the first record, but I didn't really think that there were bands that were that weren't true to form back then as much. I thought, like, this is Psychroptic's presentation. It's metal dudes, and you could hear that it's death metal. And then they had a bunch of lineup shifts, and suddenly they're like a technical hardcore band. And that's what I'm hearing here. This is there's no resemblance to traditional technical metal here. This is straight up like uber clean, like kind of Psychroptic-y, but it's of course like got the Necrophagist vibe, because that forever tainted what extreme modern metal is. I want to listen to it a little bit more, because what I will say about this particular song, I listened to it once, is that it feels like, although it has that ADD element of structuring to it, it still has a tonal continuity, which I can't say for a lot of the modern tech bands. Like, a lot of it will just throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks. And if it doesn't stick, who gives a fuck? Let's just make it happen. So let's continue a little bit. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but yeah, this band does have some more compositional strengths than a lot of them, like your Rivers of Nile or whatever that I talked about in the last video. But still, it really divorces itself from the aesthetic of what extreme metal should be, and I know that I'm going to get shit from you guys for saying the words should be, but you want your metal to be confrontational, right? This isn't something that you want everyone to enjoy. You know, extreme metal is meant for people that can see through the bullshit of other musical genres, and you can see through the bullshit of modern living. You know, this is modern life just filtered through an EQ setting that sounds good to the modern tech metal guitar player. It's one of those things where it's inherently corrupted by the focus on technique rather than the actual note choice and the arrangement stylings. But let's continue with it and see if there's other strengths to talk about. We're almost halfway through. I could probably stop playing it there. What you're seeing here is that at the very least they are continuing to utilize melodic themes without totally derailing the train. They've gone back into that verse riff, and the syncopated stuff that was happening in, I don't know, the chorus, whatever that was. It still kind of resembles like it's part of the same family of riff styles that the first riff does. So, that's good. But when your whole appeal in this type of genre voicing is your aesthetic, you can't really look towards the arrangements as being what your strengths are, and it's hard to rail on it so hard for how it sounds. Like, I want to be able to look at this and be like, okay, the arrangement seems like it's sound. It seems like it's not derailing itself by cluttering itself with too many ideas. It seems like it's there's not dynamic shifts where they don't belong, and it feels like it has the natural ebb and flow of what proper songwriting storytelling can be. It does, in essence, have all that. But when you filter it through this kind of sound, you're coming at it from less of a metal idea and more of like a rock idea. The idea that the technique is king, and the visual representation of the expression is king. I mean, the video is just them playing with a bunch of shot in a mall with a green screen effects on it. And the title of the song is vaguely mathematical. If you want to be a tech death band, you got to have the vaguely mathematical lyricism or whatever you have going on to show that there is an illusion of depth there. This band is ticking all the right boxes, but by presenting it in such a cuddly fucking way, like this is cozy ass metal. I do like some of the percussive elements of how the vocals land in that syncopation in the chorus. It shows that they are taking time to acknowledge the patterns they're creating and stick to them in a way where you are getting that power of each individual hit, but that power is severely limited when your production choice is so goddamn cuddly. It is what it is, but I think that this is going to start shaping how younger guitar players are going to approach the instrument. You're going to continue to see them buying ridiculous amounts of gear only to sound like you're playing on the clean channel. And it's going to shift the focus even further from your riff stylings and your compositional stylings, your arrangement stylings, and just be permanently fixated on whether or not you can hear all the individual techniques. And this isn't the first time that a clean production had felt so left field for me. I remember the first time I heard Gorguts Obscura, I was like, man, these, the guitars sound fucked up and the techniques are very weird, like all the pick scraping and grinding the strings against the pickup and all that shit. If that had much more gain behind it, it would have been kind of like a overly abrasive approach. I think that by having it be clean and dialed back, that type of presentation has an even more alien quality, because guitars shouldn't really sound like that. Like, it definitely inverted the idea of typical guitar playing, and by making it sound kind of clean, you're showing that you're not hiding behind a distortion to make a lot of those sounds. So that was a unique characteristic that made that album, I think, successful. But the techniques shown here aren't rooted in defying the convention of how the approach to the guitar should be. This is the result of a lot of practice on typical guitar like scalar runs, and it's firmly rooted in the modern approach of making sure that your technique is the first and foremost thing that the audience is going to hear, and that the notes in between don't really matter as much. It could be the opposite of what I'm saying, but because I can pinpoint all the influences so easily, because it sounds like a Psychroptic song, I can listen to Psychroptic. There's no reason why this band should be presented to me in front of another band that had that same kind of melodic styling. The only thing that could set them apart from it is the production choice. The production choice of being so absurdly clean. And if we get to the point with modern metal where the only differences between bands is your production choice, because all of your note choice is so similar, your arrangement choice is so similar. This is still rooted in the pop arrangement of making sure you have your verse and your chorus, as shown in like the Rivers of Nile shit. If all of that shit is the same, you have to give differences somehow to hook the audience to get them to buy your records, right? So at the very least, we're gonna. The one thing that I couldn't say for the last like 10 years is that all modern metal bands have sounded the same aesthetically. It's all the same plugins. It's all the same, if you look at the sound file, you'll see that the wave is like just a thick ass black bar right across. Like there's no dynamic at all. There's no like splits within the waveforms to show that you're just hearing a constant, like, what is that one, the circle of tone guy, he calls it the vanilla sausage or whatever. That's what you're going to see in a lot of the modern metal sound waves. So this is going, if you were to look at this as a waveform, you would be able to see the dynamic differences, because not everything is dialed up to 11. And that's kind of cool. I do like the idea that we're moving away from making sure every band sounds uniform, but I think we're doing that because every band's approach is uniform, and it's a shame, because we're kind of manipulating aesthetic to mask the lack of compositional substance. So we're probably going to continue to head this way. I think that as trends develop in metal, you're going to see more bands continue to try to make as clean a record, as clean an approach as possible, and then this will be the new sound, as opposed to that gent style where you have the overdrive pedal that's really dictating how much of an attack you have on your guitar. Like for every string, you hear that really percussive element. That's not here. This doesn't sound overdriven at all. It just sounds like a very, very light distortion, and I think that bands like this that have a huge audience, a huge base of guitar players that want to emulate sounds and are motivated by hearing another band on YouTube and trying to mimic it, I think that this is going to be the next stage, the next trend. And it's a shame, because it's furthering us from the confrontational elements of extreme metal. But at the same time, it's good in the fact that it will continue the divorce from metalcore and metal, because now we can clearly see that these guys aren't metal at all. This doesn't come from the metal mindset to make an absurdly clean but technical record, and to have no substance behind what you're saying, to have your video just being you guys playing in like a Technicolor ridiculous room with a bunch of weird jump cuts and shit, and vaguely mathematical title and lyrics. It's showing the audience that you want to hook them in with the semblance of depth, but there's nothing to explore. And when you have your sound be extra clean, where you can hear everything as it comes at you without there being anything to mask it, you know then that there's also nothing to explore tonally as well. So that's about all I wanted to say on this new kind of style. I weep for the future where this really sterile kind of tech death becomes the norm, but I think we're going to see a lot of it soon. So thanks for listening.